Welcome along to Krunching Gears, Season 1, Episode 10. In this episode, Robbie McGurk and myself, Kevin, talking rally. Robbie is a preparation expert who has built some fantastic cars over the years. He also tells us about his time when he worked at Sydney Meeke Motorsport, his time in Prodrive, and much more besides. I hope you enjoy it.
What could you do in a works car with works backup, you think, Frank?
Take it handy and win every rally around.
The proudest time and the seat of a rally car, because that day and that hour and those minutes I got the bit between my teeth. You know, I really stood up and was counted and said, this is not getting away. I remember when we pulled on our helmets and Donald says to me, what are we doing? I said, we're going for gold, Barrett.
Welcome along to Krunching Gears. In this episode, we're joined by the one and only Robbie McGurk. Robbie will be a very familiar name to many in his car preparation business, but also like his time behind the wheel and also his time in the co-driver's seat, which we'll delve into as the episode progresses. Welcome along, Robbie.
Good man, Kevin. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Delighted. So,
as I was saying earlier, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
Not at all. So, Robbie, how did you get involved in the first place into motorsport?
Kevin, I got involved, I suppose, like all the other young fellas. I was just fascinated by rally cars and the noise, and I suppose you could put it down to an Italian carburetor designer called Eduardo Weber. Still today, you know, guys, they hear the sound.
Yes.
Sound. I don't know. Maybe that sounds a bit anarchy, but that's basically what got me hooked or got me involved. Just I suppose went along to the local events, and I can remember years and years ago, myself and my cousins out on a Friday night watching the navigation rallies, you know, Cooper S's and the twin cams and the stuff and the noise and the spotlights up into the sky, and it was a fantastic experience. I suppose we got sort of hooked from there. And I remember one of my earliest memories, excuse me, being at a rally was the Dunoman rally, which was Dungannon, Oma, and Enniskillen Motor Club. They had they organised an event. It was called the Dunoman, and I remember there was a service halt at Knocknamo Castle in Oma. I don't know, maybe it wasn't a service halt, it was a breakfast halt or something. And I can remember being there and someone handing me a bunch of programs to sell.
Yes.
Now, if I remember correct, that was 1972. I was probably 14 or 15 around then. So
yes.
I don't remember how many programs I sold, but that was, you know, there, getting there. I didn't see any of the rally. I seen the rally cars, you know, in the car park, and you know, fascinated them. That's, you know, my earliest memories really of it. And I suppose from then on, we just got involved in the local club, the Oma Motor Club, I suppose, and went marshalling and just sort of tried to get involved in whatever way you could. I think that at that time then they organised navigation classes in the tech in Oma, and we would have went to that. We'd done a few nights, you know, learning how to plot and read maps and things, and then we would have went out on maybe a Wednesday night and done a 12-car rally. And you know, this might as well be the Circuit of Ireland to us, you know, going and doing a rally and taking part, and getting to the end of it was a major achievement. But you know, that is how I got involved in it, and you would have sat with anybody, or you would have went to navigation rallies with anybody. And I think the first memory of a navigation rally was a guy from Oma here. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. Nigel Allen and myself, we went to Cookstown Motor Club navigation rally on a Friday night. We were in a Fiat 500 or something, 126 or something like that, with a map light and a roamer and a potty and a big spot on the map, Class 3, and we got well and truly lost, I have to say. In fact, I think we had to ask our way home, or ask to get back from out of the mountains. But that's basically how I got involved in the, you know, the talk about the drug, the drug bit. Well, the rest just followed on, and I suppose then. And back in those days, I would have sat with anybody or tried to get a seat with anybody, get into that environment and get experience, you know. So, and then as things progressed, I would have been mechanicking in a local garage here. Back then, although at that time they were no longer living in Oma, but the McCartneys, Ronnie and Desi, they are originally from Oma, and they were up in Larne, and I don't really know how it came about. I got involved with Ronnie, going to rallies, working with them on the cars, and you know, went with anybody, just anybody that was something. And you know, it was always it was just getting experience, and I mean, I sat in the back of old cars and stuff, going to Killarney and those took maybe 12 hours, and if you're along with Ronnie, it could have took 24 hours. Trying to buy and sell cars and stuff, but it was all good experience, and you can't get experience unless you go and do things like that, you know. As a well-known gentleman from Prodrive, Paul Howard, used to always say, it's not chocolate. We could never figure out for a long time what he meant. You know, what's that boy raving on about? It's not chocolate. I asked him one day, I said, what's not chocolate? He says, experience. You can't buy it. You know, you have to go and
put in the hours.
Put in the hours and go and do all that. I mean, that was all voluntary then. You got your bed and breakfast, and that was it really. But it's all good fun, and I would probably do it all again. Yeah,
and like with Ronnie and Desi McCartney too, you'd have been, you know, you've been working on some very good cars too. They always had X-Works, you know, like Mark II, Chevettes, one thing or another too, hadn't they as well? So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there was good cars, and you know, to be perfectly honest about it, the first time I seen me going to rallies with Ronnie, and he would have probably had a different car at every event.
Yes.
This week we're on a Chevette, and next week we're on a Skoda, and I had never seen a Chevette or an Skoda. But you know, as you find out down through the years, they're all nuts and bolts, and if you have somebody with you that has a half a notion, you can get stuck in beside them and go ahead. You know, it's all fairly self-explanatory. And back in those days, I mean, you hadn't got the same sort of technology and stuff that you have these days, and you know, you were always changing an odd gearbox and axles and things like that. It's not just as bad today now.
No, it's not a laptop you needed then. It was brute force, wasn't it? More times than it.
But a bit of a toolbox, and away you went, and you soon learned the tools that you needed and the tools that you could leave at home. But it was all a good learning experience, and as you say, they had loads of different cars, from Sunbeams to Chevettes, and then Desi one time, the Circuit of Ireland, Desi, an old D7 Lancia.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was basically a road car, and Desi got that car and spent a lot of time getting spare panels and stuff made for it, because they're all fiberglass and stuff. And Circuit of Ireland that year, both of them done the rally. Ronnie was in the Chevette, and Desi was in that. You know, I think Desi finished it. I'm not sure if Ronnie finished it or not. I think they probably did. But there's been so many events, Kevin. It's hard to remember them all, and it's hard to remember the results.
I can remember the big thing at the time that year too. Lancia come over with Pinty Rickla, I think, in like a works car, and Desi's lasted longer than the works car, didn't it? Yeah.
That's right. I think Pinty was probably leading the rally at one stage, but then I don't remember what happened. He retired, but that was when the circuit was 5 days. 5 days,
yeah, day and night at that time,
Sure. And then there again, if you hadn't got youth on your side, you couldn't do it. I couldn't do it today.
No.
I mean, it's just when you're coming up there on the Sunday night, leaving Killarney and coming up the west, you don't know where you're punched aboard.
No.
And there's no mobile phones, and you had to read a map and try and get to wherever you were basically loosely supposed to be, and no, it was all a steep learning curve, and you were sort of threw in at the deep end, and away you go. Sure,
there was no centralised servicing or nothing. You were to meet somewhere along the edge of the road, wasn't it? Really,
Side of the road somewhere or wherever, and as I say, there was no. You were very, very lucky. You were a very, very special team if you had two-way radios then. So you just sort of waited and waited and waited, and if they didn't come, then you asked the next car, and did you see such and such, and sort of winging it. But those were all good days. They were all good times.
And you obviously had a strong relationship with Ronnie too, because he had you co-driving in '81. So
he did. In 1981, I done the Lakeland stages with Ronnie in a Skilling rally, the Bushwacker in a Sunbeam, and this is my first time to sit with a proper decent driver on gravel, and it just amazed me. Now I would be to call me a co-driver would be you need to use a bit of imagination. Now I put my hand up and say I never was a great co-driver or navigator, but I basically had an idea of how to read the road book, and once you left the start of the stage, it was just amazing, just totally amazing. And the car control that man had was someone else, and especially on gravel. Maybe not just as quick. Might have been a bit sharper on the tarmac, but Ronnie was something else on the gravel. And you had guys like Bertie Fisher and Hugh O'Brien and stuff down through the years. If they were competing on that rally, he was the first time they were looking for.
Yeah.
If you were, you were probably leading the rally.
You were going.
So we were looking. I can't remember where we finished in the Lakeland. It was probably 4th or 5th or something like that. And then we came to the Bushwacker, and we won the rally. I don't know by how much or whatever, but it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
You do a rally with somebody like that. And the other interesting thing about that was at that time too, in 1981, with whatever points I got for my co-driving skills in the Lakeland and the Bushwacker, it left me that I won the co-drivers championship that year.
Right, brilliant.
There's not a lot of people know this, and there's probably not a lot of people are that interested, but after 1981, there was no longer a championship for quite a few years. So I was the reigning Northern Ireland co-driver for quite a few years. Which, as I say, not a lot of people know that.
No. It's your badge of pride, isn't it?
No, that's
So how did you make the move from passenger seat into driver's seat?
It was always there, Kevin. Whenever, excuse me, whenever you could afford to buy a car, I mean, the car never cooled. You were away every way. You were here, there. And if you're going to the shop, you went the long road, and you maybe went via some of the back roads, and if there was snow, oh, sure. I mean, it was just Monte Carlo.
Yes.
So the urge to get into motorsport was obviously the co-driving didn't cost you anything, but if you wanted to go driving, you have a car. and probably the first car would have been an Avenger, and of minis an Avenger. I couldn't even count up how many we had. We used to they were sort of like disposable items about here. There was a guy across the road from us here, used to break cars sort of as a sideline, and he kept me all the bumpers and wings and headlights and radiators and stuff. He set all that aside for me, and only for him we couldn't have went wrong. You know, a radiator was a $5 and the headlamp was £2 and stuff like that. But that's really how we got into it. And many guy told me that I should never have been rallying, and I know that myself because I could never afford it.
Yes.
But anyway, we persevered at it, and we done some strange things to get going rallying. We held the film shows way back in the day. Remember, they used to be very probably even before your time, Kevin. They used to be very. You would have a night in the Purchase or the Royal Arms in Oma there, and charge a couple of pounds to get in to watch these videos and films and stuff, and just fundraising. And then that's basically how we kept the thing going. You know, I've always probably worked from the shoulders down, which is a bad thing. You know, I never was a salesman or anything like that, but it was just manual graft, and we had to try and scrape up a few pounds here and there.
Yeah, and like you know, them Avengers, you had some fantastic results over the years too, hadn't you? Like it was.
Listen, I mean, we had. It wasn't all champagne. We had quite a few World Championship accidents. And, there's a few reshells done, you know, here on the long, cold, dark nights. But yeah, we had some fantastic results. And the last event that I had, we won a rally in Carrick-on-Suir in 1989. Bill Adair was my co-driver. Now, there again, getting back to in 1989, it probably took us 8 or 9 hours to go to Waterford.
Yes.
To the rally, and probably the same again coming home. The roads have improved greatly since then, but that particular rally that day, there was bits and pieces of snow about, and I think it probably helped us a bit because she wasn't the most powerful yoke in the car park. But no, I just loved those wee cars. They were cheap and cheery, and they were, you know, it was amazing. It was amazing on some of the things you could get away with them. You know.
And were you still running, like, it was, you know, was the engine and all developed by that stage? Like, were you still running, like, wasn't a 1600 by that stage, or what were you running?
Yeah, at that stage she was 1600. Now, it was the same old story, Kevin. It's just bits and pieces. You know, it's the same story today, and you know, the boy was saying, if we could just have this, or if we could have that, or maybe get those tires or those suspensions or this. I remember at that time the TI Sunbeams. The big thing was then to get a set of TI pistons into your engine.
Right.
And that made a mass difference. So they were too expensive. So I remember being at a guy's house outside Dungannon one night. Ian Cuddy was doing a bit of work with him, and this guy sort of specialised in sunbeams. And they had 4 second-hand TI Sunbeam pistons under the bench. I spied them, and they were second-hand. Now, they came out of some of those TI Challenge cars in the UK, and I gave them 40 quid for them. A lot of money. And we got them into the car and progressed, but you know, it didn't really make that much difference. But it's sort of, I suppose, in your head, you thought you had to be and, you know, building engines and polishing connecting rods with sandpaper and shining up things and trying to balance them and all, and just doing the wee silly things. And if somebody got it now, they'd say you're not wise in the head. But that was that. And then towards the end, there was a 2-litre Vauxhall engine, an 8-valve engine.
Right.
Now, what was unique about it was on fuel injection.
Oh yeah.
I think that might have been a first for an Avenger.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a good going thing, and it progressed. I don't think we done any real big damage with it or won much with it, but it was good crack, good fun to drive. You know,
it was a big step forward in what you had been competing in.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you were saying that you were like mechanical and all. At this stage, then you were obviously developing up through the preparation side. You were with Sydney Meeke then too.
Well, I'm not sure. Sydney, I would have been doing bits and pieces with Sydney. Would have got an odd phone call to go with maybe Vincent Bonner or Bertie Fisher or some of his customers. Not on a regular basis. You know, one-offs here and there, and then I think then I got a phone call from Sydney. It was probably around the end of '88. From memory, it was around the end of '88. Sydney had already been out in Spain at this stage, and he had done a sort of a year or two, maybe sort of a reconnaissance of what they were doing in Spain, and he was asked then to run that satellite team for Spain, and he needed extra men, so I went. I think '89 was the first year in Spain, and the first couple of years, or the first year was the cadets, and they were at that time the 8-valve cadets, Group A.
Yes.
And it was a big change from Ireland. Well, first of all, the logistics of it all. You just don't step into the van on a Saturday morning and go to Scrutely on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, you had to leave. I remember the vans that we used were GM. They were Chevy vans. They were 5.7 litre V8 petrol. The fuel tank held 100 litres. Now the fuel back then was a lot cheaper than it is now, but it was relative. So we used to fill the vans in the bush, and when we were at the end of the A75, we needed another fill. Basically, you could drive for 3 hours and use fuel. You get on down through England, get over to Calais, and back then you had carnies and stuff for all the spares, and it was a nightmare. Oh yeah. Because all the French customs and all that, French customs didn't want to know you. They were just, you know, and if you didn't know what you needed stamped, you could be in trouble, because going into France, drunk and grown at you, and the next thing you arrive and you're heading out of France into Spain, and some guy down there tells you that you're missing a stamp here in your carnet, and you know, then there's a row was at the frontier over that. But that's what I say about the logistics of that. And then we were based in Madrid. Back then the roads in Spain weren't as good as they are today either. So it was a long hike now. It was a very, very long hike. We done it that often. You know, you sort of get into a routine, and you know, you just get on with it. And I can remember France used to take us 12 hours. You get off the ferry in Calais at 9 a.m. and you'd be crossing the border into Spain at 9 p.m. And that was fuel every 3 hours, cup of coffee, sandwich, and another 3 hours. It was. But luckily enough, now we didn't have much problems or too many problems in France with the police, because we're always on the toll roads. Right. And they never really seemed to bother you much. But Spain now is a different kettle of fish. They were Spanish police. They just had no sense of humour at all. And luckily enough, back in those days, there was no such thing as tacos or anything like that either. No. You know, it was more or less speed and stuff like that, and they would have jumped on you for silly things, you know. Silly things.
Yeah.
But we soon learned to avoid those pitfalls and try our best to stay in trouble. But that, as I say, it started off with the cadets. There was two cars for the tarmac championship, which was probably, I remember, it was 8 or 10 events. They were all over Spain, all over the mainland, and there was one in Tenerife and one in the Gran Canaries as well, and Gran Canaria.
Yes.
I think there was maybe 10 or 12 tarmac events. And then later on, we also done the gravel championship.
Top of that again, yeah.
Top of that again, which was another 8 events. So, you know, there was a lot of time spent in Spain, and 92, I think, then we moved from the cadet then to the courses, with a season with courses, 2 courses, plus a couple other courses for privateers. We were sort of looking after them as well. And then after that, then came the Astras.
The 16 valve then, that stage then, was that?
16 valve Astras then. And I think, not sure when it was, 93. I think we won the tarmac championship in 93 with Mayo play.
Yes.
And that was, you know, back then, in the earlier times, you were competing with, you know, Lancias, the Ford Sierra, the Renault, the Opel, and there's 4 or 5 manufacturers there. But then they went to the sort of the F2 route, or the sort of the
front wheel drive. Yes.
Yeah, the front wheel drive. The big cars, the Lancias and the Fords and stuff weren't allowed. And then you were competing then with Peugeot and Renault and stuff like that. The Clio was always a fantastic car. We always had a lot of trouble with the Clio. Number one, the Clio was a very light car to start off with.
Yes.
So the Clio in rally trim, you could have been way under the weight limit, whereas Astras, they were way over the weight limit, and we had loads and loads of problems trying to keep the weight down on them. We always got them down to the weight limit, but it was a very expensive operation to do that, and it was a lot of time and money to get them to the minimum weight.
I suppose Renault was able to place weights to get them.
No, the Renault, they could get their car under the weight and then put a big heavy sump guard on it, you know, just exactly when you need the weight. So we always struggled now to get the weight to where it was, and but you know, the cars were all fairly reliable. You know, you had the usual problems then with the drive shafts and stuff like that, but the transmission, the gearbox, and the engines, Group A engines. Swinton Racing Engines done them. We were always very lucky now. I don't really recall too many big accidents. I think one of the reasons for that was they'd done a serious recce. Serious recce. But then they sort of cut that out then in the later years too. But I remember in the early years with the cadets and stuff, they done full speed recces. In Group A cars. I remember doing I was out to do a recce myself. One man to look after 2 cars in the recce. It wasn't too bad, but they would have started recceing at sort of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they would have done a couple of stages at sort of sensible pace. But then we put the spot lamps on, and see, once it came darkening, I remember being in a village one night, and there was BMW, Lancia, Ford, Opel, Renault. It was like a service park. The place was lit up, and there was barbecues going. There was merchandise people there. This is during the recce.
Yes.
Maybe on the Wednesday night before the rally. These guys, they would take turns at these stages, and it was they all controlled it themselves, and the police and all were there, and they knew what was going on, and the spectators were up in the mountains, and you could see the barbecues going, and the cracks was 90. And I thought that, you know, if Matt Doherty came around the corner here,
Yes.
That may have been one of the reasons why we never had any major crashes or accidents. You know, we had an odd bumper and stuff like that. But in fairness, now they didn't throw them off the road that often. And then what we used to do was, after the event, we then went on to the dealers in the town where the next event's going to be. The next event could be maybe 3 or 4 weeks' time, but we went up there and parked all the vehicles and stuff up, and excuse me, probably then flew out a week or so before the next event and re-prepped everything and done the wreck.
Yeah.
But it was interesting time now in Spain. It was a different sort of a different environment from the rallying at home.
Yes.
From the point of view of the wrecking and stuff that they done.
And like them teams, like it wasn't just privateers. A lot of them, you know, they were sort of blessed factory entries and all too, weren't they?
Oh yeah, there were official BMW and Lancia and Renault and Peugeot and Opel. They were all official teams, and they were all spent big budgets. But you couldn't compete with the Lancias and the Ford, obviously, in a Group A car. But they changed that, and they went to front wheel drive, and that sort of suited obviously the Peugeot and the Renault and the Opel manufacturers.
Yes.
There were some interesting times, and a lot of the rallies ran on to sort of late at night and finished maybe at 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening.
Right. Yeah.
Spain, having the climate to do, they would have had a massive prize given at maybe 12 o'clock at night.
Yes.
The first 3 cars would be up in big ramps and podiums, and there would be fireworks, and there's a whole ding dong. We're sitting waiting to get everything collected up, and the next thing then you get a letter from the scrutineers to go to post-event scrutiny, and they wanted to weigh number 3 cylinder connecting rod or something like that. By the time we had them off the ramps and stuff, it was 1 a.m.
Yes.
Went to the local dealers and started taking engines out and stripping, weighing connecting rods. And I seen us leaving post-event scrutiny at 8 o'clock the next morning with a box of bits just pushed into the van. And you know, there were tough nights now. There's a lot of late nights.
Yeah. And the overall development will still be going on in Dungannon as well.
Sorry?
There'll be a lot of development of that car being going on in Dungannon, and then that would all that sort of know-how would have to be.
Well, the car was basically developed by GM Eurosport,
right.
Which later turned out to be MSD. You know, all the bits, they had all the bits homologated for it, and they supplied us with all the bits.
Okay, right, yes.
The biggest development part that we had was trying to get them down to the weight.
Okay.
Get them.
Yes.
Now there was a few clever things done that sort of didn't break the rules, but bent the rules. So let's leave it there.
Good.
Well, no, those cars were fairly much developed. They just came as a package, and then as a result, tires and fuel and stuff like that. And they were a fairly basic engine. They were restricted by the air intake, so there wasn't a lot. There were, I think, 130 brake horsepower, 135 if you had a real good one.
Yes.
But no, the scrutineers used to give us a fairly hard time, and it was something that all the manufacturers signed up to. They wanted it policed properly, so that was part of the. You know, if you had a bit of success, well, you had to go and show that you were doing it by the book or doing it properly.
Yeah, done fairly. Yeah. And then you know they went on to develop a 4-wheel drive Vectra then too as well. Was that Sydney Meeke as well, or was that again?
Well, excuse me. We built a 4-wheel drive Vectra in Dungannon, yeah. And the rules for the gravel championship were completely open.
Okay.
It was a very, very open championship. I mean, you could literally have 2 engines in the car. Now, the range of engines that Opel or GM had at the time was limited sort of to the 16 valve thing, and
Yes.
they hadn't really anything that had been turbocharged or anything at that stage. So we did seriously consider and talked about having a twin engine car, because Citroen had one in Spain and worked fairly well. So we thought, why not? And then I remember being at an event somewhere in Spain, and I think it was Peter Garvin was at home. Peter would have been a very good man at fabricating and stuff. So Peter was left at home to cut out the back boots and stuff out of this car to facilitate it in the rear. And I think there was a phone call made at home to stop. Don't do that. We're going to try and turbocharge one of these engines. So we turbocharged an engine, and back then it was, you were very limited. You know, they didn't have the electronics and stuff to suit it. And it was a good effort now. And then we tried supercharging them as well. And now that was just another experience. And it was everything was all against the clock. You know, these were things that were sort of going on in, you know, mid-season or too late at the beginning of the season to commitments made, and we had to be there. And literally I seen us screwing bits on the cars on the boat going out, you know, and that was so tight, so tight. But they tried all these things, and look, listen, it was never a great success, but we got them a bit more competitive than they would have been with the aspirated engine. But that was interesting. Now that was an interesting project, and it was there again. It was something, as I say, it was all open, and we could use whatever transmission and suspension and things we wanted, you know.
But wasn't that brilliant? Like a small local firm, you know, like Sydney Meeke at that time, taking on the likes of Lancia and Ford and these guys, and being, you know, reasonably competitive against them as well too. So.
Oh well, yeah. Well, that was it. I mean, it was a challenge. Now, a few late nights in Dungannon, and I wouldn't agree with you. I would have said, this is madness that we're at here, because we're working around the clock and trying to get these. But it was a challenge, and it's like everything else, Kevin. If the budget's there to do it, you know, it's amazing. And it's remarkable what you can do. When Sydney says you're doing it, what are we going to do it with? But you know, it takes there's a whole lot of things need to come together. You know, you need to get your engine guy and all on board as well. And in fairness to Swinton, they did pull out a lot of stops now to try and make the thing work. But then I remember at that time the exhaust and everything were free. I mean, basically the exhaust manifold came out of the side of this car, out of the front of the engine, and went straight out through the inner guard, out through the front wing, just behind the headlamp. That's where the exhaust came out. And the driver was telling us he was at the start of the stage, and the timekeeper was sitting here, and I think the timekeeper's table went on fire. There was some debates.
So that all come to an end. Like you were saying, that the way it come to an end was sort of a bit horrible for you too, wasn't it? Like, so.
It was a bit messy, but then you see these big manufacturers, they do things in board meetings and they just say, right, this is what we're going to do. Put a pen through. We actually read it in the motoring news. It was at the time that GM were going to stop rallying and they were going to concentrate on touring car racing.
Yes.
So at that time, Spain already had a touring car team run by an Italian crowd, and it wasn't really. We weren't touring car people really, and that's just the way it went. So that all ended. When was it? End of.
Yes, late 93, early 94, yeah, kind of around that time. Yeah.
I think it was the end of 94. And around that time, we were also building for the next year's Gravel Championship in Spain, which would sort of preempted that we were going to do, but then it obviously didn't happen. But we were building a four-wheel drive Corsa.
Yes.
And that car was, in fact, it's still about. Barry Meeke now has that car, and he's restoring it at the minute. But that was another project that was, it was sort of like a Super 2000 car.
It was way ahead of his time there, really, wasn't it? Yeah. So
20 years before the Super 2000 cars came out.
Yeah.
And no, that is another massive project. And unfortunately, I mean, there was plans for using a V6 engine and all sorts of things like that on it, but unfortunately, it never happened. So
yeah. Like, you know, like the one-offs that Meeke produced were, you know, way ahead of their time. Like, you know, you think of that Corsa, like a 2-litre red top in it, the McCartney 4x4 Escort. You know, all them cars, the Orion, still going strong today too. You know. So.
That's right. I mean, there were. I think the plan at that time, especially with the Peugeots.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think the plan there was to sort of, you know, Sunbeams and Avengers were getting scarce, and this was something that you could put all your running gear into, and you had kind of a current, modern-looking car. And
true.
That was one of the Sydney's projects, and as you say, then the Orion, there was 2 or 3 of those built. There was a rallycross version, and there was a road car version too.
That's right. Yeah. The rallycross one was what you call them, Kearns, wasn't it?
Kearns, yeah. And then the rally car, Stephen Finlay had it, and Bertie Fisher drove it, and
Barry McGurk drove it too, didn't he?
Barry McGurk drove it. When it came out at that time, I think it had a Hart engine or something like that. Now this was slightly before my time.
Right. Yes.
But I was lucky enough to drive that car myself, and at that time it had a normally aspirated Cosworth engine.
Okay.
Nice going, but it was very much like a Manta, because you know all the running gear, the suspension and stuff was all Manta, and it was very similar characteristics. But lovely car to drive. When you see the amount of work that goes into one of those shells, I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and like even you were saying that, you know, the 205 as well, like it was sort of run. You could have had an Opel engine in it, you could have had an Avenger engine in it, you could have a Nissan engine in it. Like it was so, you know, the planning that went into that just to slot an engine into it. It's not just simple, is it? Too, you know.
No, it's not simple. I mean, the floor pans and chassis legs and stuff like that. Just, you know, plasma cutter and cut that out, weld this in and see what way it goes. There's a lot of work in it now. There's a lot of work. Again, that was slightly before my time. I wasn't really involved in much of that stuff.
Yes.
But as I say, there was some of the engineering feats were remarkable.
And even just before we leave the sort of the Meeke thing behind, like you were saying about Bonner and Fisher and all that, like them Mantas and all too, like they were they were as good as anything, and probably as good and not better than McRae and Brooks and cars, you know. So Meeke's cars was as good as anybody's at them days.
Absolutely, as I say. Well, I sort of I wasn't there much for the building of those cars. I would have been
more
called in for not. But in fact, I was talking to Sydney there recently. The time they were very busy at that. They've been running a Manta for Verdi, and I think they built one for Austin McHale, and they built one for Billy Coleman. It was just crazy busy too. And at that time, they'd done a few shells themselves, but they would have got some of the shells from Germany, from the factory in Germany, and that would have saved a lot of time. But I think one of the last lightweight cars they'd done, that might have been, I think they'd done themselves. Can't know. Wesley would probably know better than that. Wesley Emerson, who was there in those earlier days.
Yes. So your involvement come to an end then with Meeke then, I suppose, like whenever they pulled the pin, Opel pulled the pin at that stage then, and you moved on to Honda touring cars.
Well, was a very brief spell at as I say, MSD used to be GM Eurosport, and then when all that folded up, they became Motorsport Development, and they had the contract to do I think it was the British touring cars with Honda. After Spain finished, I think the four-wheel drive Corsa was still going on at that stage, and there was a bit of work to be done with that. And then MSD were under a lot of pressure, and myself and Wesley went over there and give them a bit of a hand out. But it was sort of fabricating and stuff like that, and I wasn't that keen on it, to be honest with you. But when I was there, I had a phone call from Paul Harris to see could I come and give them a hand. So I told David Whitehead that I was going to move on, and there was no problem. There's no animosity or anything. So I went on into Banbury then and started working with Paul in the customer team.
Okay,
and,
yes.
It was Dave Campion was the boss there, and generally they like you to come and do a bit of workshop work, for 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'd have been off to probably the Far East to the Asian Pacific, some of those Asian Pacific championships.
Yes.
But most of the work that I done with ProDrive was for the customer team,
right?
And it was slightly better than going with the rally team. From the point of view was you were going with privateers. They looked after you very well, and if you were going for 10 days, you got 10 days day money before you left, and the chances are when you came back, you still had it because the customers looked after you very well.
Right.
That was a bit of a bonus. It's the same, as they talk about, it's the same shit, different bucket. But
yes,
that's doing the same work. But it was very interesting. Now a lot of time away out in that Far East places, like Thailand, Indonesia, Australia, and the long haul flights. They're all good crack at the time,
and catch up in the body then too. Yeah. So.
When you get to about your 7th or 8th flight that year, it does become a bit of a drag, But listen, you're a lot younger back in them days, and you're well fit for it. So it was a good way. And then plus. Then when the rally team were under a bit of pressure, if they're running 3 or 4 cars, there'd been a few boys from the customer team hauled in there, and went and done events with them as well. Yes. All changed today. I mean, back in those days, there wasn't so much of the regimented stuff that they have now. It was you sort of got set up where you could, and you serviced where you could. It was always coming for the TV and things, the way they have it now with the big garages and stuff, just completely.
Aye, it's nearly become racing rather than rallying. A lot of that is at this side of it.
It's so regimented now, and it's probably for the better for the TV coverage and stuff.
Of course it is, yeah.
In them days, but we were there, and I would have done. Plus the fact that I was involved with the customer team, would have done a lot of publicity stuff with Pirelli and with different countries. For instance, there was Switzerland. The guy, the importer in Switzerland, decided he would ask ProDrive could he send out Colin McRae to give his customers a joyride.
Right, yes.
So it was all arranged. I don't know. There was 50 young lads who had bought WRX Subarus in Switzerland, and they all got a joyride with Colin McRae on a gravel stage. Now, when we arrived at the hotel, it was just on the side of a mountain, and there again, back then there was no sat navs or very few telephones. We drove past this place, and it was just, the car park was full of blue with 555 and all this, just typical boy racers. Yes. The car park literally, I thought, geez, this is a big show that's on this weekend. These were the young lads' cars. These were the bobble hatters. This was their road cars. So we used to get involved in a few events like that, and Colin would have took those guys for a run. Honest to God, you know, most of them when they were sort of fell out of the car when they came back after. I put my hand up and say I was one of them, but I didn't just let it out, but I just shook my head and said, you know, I'm going to hang up the glove.
Different gravy, as they say.
Different level. Big thing.
Yes.
Well,
like,
yeah, there was some.
But was he like exceptionally more talented than anybody you'd ever sat with before at that stage?
Listen, in that machinery too, it was in a Group A Impreza at the time, and there was parts of the stage that was on the side of a mountain, and there's parts of the stage that were icy. And well, my excuse to get a run was the first run on the morning. We better go and check this stage to make sure it's safe enough. So I said, right, sure, I'll come with you. Oh, Kevin, it was take the light from your eyes, and then that's just the only way. And this is only on a warm-up run.
Yes.
But you know, he was just so natural a driver, and you know, that car was developed around him, so he was just part of it. And,
yes.
You know, left foot braking and things like that. And I'm sitting looking over at this, just saying, how are we going to get around this corner? I was thinking to myself, Jesus, would you see the headlines in motorsport news this week? Big accident in Switzerland. But no, listen, it just was blow your mind. Yes. Blow your mind. And that was in a Group A car. Just imagine what it'd be like today in one of those other cars.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's my one of my claims to fame. As they say, never meet your hero, but I have to say that was something special.
He was definitely an exceptional talent, wasn't he? Then too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And like, were you still working with Mick, at home here, the likes of Bertie Fisher, not as well, bits and pieces too?
Oh, there still would have been, yeah. There still would have been bits and pieces. There was never anything written down and said, look, you're doing this, that, the other. There was no plan as such. And plus, at that stage, I was doing bits and pieces for some of my own customers.
Okay.
And building kind of a customer base there. We still would have been involved with the likes of Bertie and the Imprezas and stuff like that. I couldn't tell you, Kevin, how many rallies I'd done with Bertie. I can remember one of them in particular was the circuit one year in one of the blue cars. That year, Bertie had a misdemeanor on every stage. You know, from the first stage, I think we're putting TCAs and steering arms and stuff in it, and it went on the whole rally, and then the next thing there was a gearbox, and the next thing then, I remember, I think it was on the last morning way up the country near Belfast, the radio crackled into life, and of course Rory going, where are you? Chase car at the end of the stage. We've hit a telegraph pole or something here. The next thing we could hear was the rumble coming, and we could hear that there was at least a puncture. So when he came out past us, we got in behind him in the chase car and went up the road. We're looking. There was no back left-hand corner in it at all. Everything was gone. So we're on the radio to the van saying, "Listen, you may get a trailing arm, and you may get a cross member and lateral links and a drive shaft and hub and damper. Get everything ready for that corner." And we hadn't noticed the front of it. The front of it was damaged as well. So that was all, there's a shit fight corral in there. We got the back corner, and then we're bleeding up brakes, and then somebody discovered that there was damage on the front of it as well. Oh, pure pandemonium. But the radio messages from Rory were something else. Honest to God, it was, and that was back in the days of chase cars.
Yes.
I was very, very glad to hear that they were going to ban chase cars, because it was not only it was hard work. It was, you had to try and be at the end of every other stage using 2 chase cars or maybe 3 and a tire somewhere, and it was just lunacy.
And you probably 2 or 3 drums of racing fuel and tyres, the weight of the car and everything else as well.
You had jerry cans of fuel, and you probably had at least 4 or maybe 5 wheels. Plus, you had a fairly comprehensive spares kit in the back of those Subaru state cars. I have to say that's one thing Bertie Fisher done with Irish Rally. He raised the bar, and I definitely did. Everybody else followed because they had to, and it brought Irish rallying way up. And I definitely did.
He took it to another level too, didn't he?
Of course, another level, and it was very professionally run. But some of the escapades now were. But as I say, I was glad to hear the chase cars being banned, and I was happy to sit in the service area and wait on the cars coming. It was a liability. It was a liability.
Because if that had ever happened, it would have been curtains.
Yeah, but you're on about trying to get to wherever you were supposed to go to, and then you had to try and get into the service as well. And sometimes it was easier getting into the service than in other places. There was an odd row now with marshals and stuff, and sure.
Yes.
We often said you could write a book, but none of us ever did.
So you were saying, so you were getting busier and busier with your own work then at home. So you sort of called time in the Prodrive work then, was it?
Well, it's sort of a thing that there again there was nothing really written down. At the start of the year we said, "Will you do this or do that?" There's 6 or 7 rallies. Yeah, then you knew what you were doing. I mean, that is one thing, but that place you knew exactly what you were doing. Plus, then they were doing those drive day things like that thing in Switzerland and other PR dues and stuff like that. And plus, then there'd been work with the rally team that wasn't necessarily on the calendar. But rather than just getting busy at home, Kevin, and the time just became, you just couldn't do it all. So we just had to cut our stick. And even after when it did start working full time at home, I still would have done an odd foreign rally for whoever. But no, we started concentrating on home then. Probably, I don't know when would that have been? Probably 97ish.
Right.
Thereabouts.
Yes.
Still would have done bits and pieces of odd events with them. And who have we been with? The likes of Tony Kearns with the Group M Subaru, and we done the Tarmac Championship with Tony. We're lucky enough to win it, and it had been ex-Traverse Group M car. She's been I can't even remember what year she was, but she would have been one of the first Group M cars.
Yes.
And sort of progressed on from there. We've done a bit of work. Tony then had a Metro 6 hours. Or I can't remember, the Metro might even been before that. But I remember borrowing it off him one day to do the 5 Mile Town Rally.
Yes.
Now there was a scary experience. I had never driven anything like it before, and I can't remember. There was no gravel stuff for it, but we got her jacked up and got gravel wheels on it, and away we went. But now she would put manners in you.
Right.
She would put in you. That was an experience. That car now, it was definitely an experience.
Yes.
But don't know that I've done much with Tony's Metro, but I know I drove it, and then he had the Group N car. He done the championship. He won it, and then sort of got tied down with business and stuff. And then from there on, sort of just got busy with other bits and pieces going on here. And then I suppose in the late 90s, 96, 97, maybe 97 or 98, the Mitsubishi started becoming very popular. We built a couple of Evo 4s. And then the next thing, they brought out an Evo 5, and you remember for years and years, every year there was a new Evo coming out.
The 6 and the 6.5.
Right. It just progressed from there. I can't remember. I think we probably built a dozen of those Mitsubishis in around that time.
Yes.
And in fact, there's still a few of them about now. But that was a very busy time with the Group N cars, and then sort of doing the Irish stuff, both the tarmac and the national. Not so many of the national events back then. I didn't really get much into the national events till Patrick Elliott came along, and then he decided we built him a new Evo 6. I think that was about '99.
Okay.
And then after that, he progressed to a Group A in Preza, and then he had a '99 car, and then well, the rest is.
Yeah. He was another one of these guys. Every year he upgraded the car to the next spec.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So we had a lot of events with Patrick, and Patrick now would have been. You weren't sure until the Sunday night when you had it in the trailer. You weren't sure what you were sort of going to bring home now.
Right.
Patrick had a few. I don't mean any disrespect by saying it, but Patrick had a few fairly decent offs. But he progressed as a driver, and it was great to see, how he did progress.
In the last few years, he become very successful. Didn't he? Two then won quite a few rallies.
Yeah. Very matter of fact about it too. I mean, if he said at the beginning or at the end of the previous year, we're doing the national championship and we'll do Donegal and we'll do this and we'll do that, that's exactly what he did do. So he knew exactly. Right. Now that put you under a bit of pressure, because if you had an off and one weekend, then you were
flat out to get ready for the next weekend or whatever. Yeah.
And there was no such thing as not being there. I seen me going and having to bribe my body man to get the car up the queue and things like that. But that was all part of it, and a lot of good success with Patrick,
and also the Group M times there was Gene Megan and Trevor Cathers too as well.
That's right. Gene Megan. Gene won the tarmac championship, and I think it was in it had been Evo 5 with Gene. Evo 5, and then we also built an Evo 7 for Gene, and Trevor Challis came along, and Trevor had an Evo 5. He came along here in an Evo 5, and we done the tarmac championship with him. But a controversy that year with the Group M stuff. I remember a Cork 20 rally. There was at that stage there was the rules were being flaunted a wee bit, just bent, not badly broken, but just bent. And there, at the end of that rally, I think there was 4 drivers excluded from the event for having dump valve infringements.
Right. Yes.
One sort of or another. And anyway, that ended up that we had to go. We were excluded out of the rally in Cork 20. It was a long road home from Cork that weekend.
Head down,
Head down, and it was nothing that I done with the car. This was on the car when it came here, and I knew it was there, and I just would not touch it. And the ironic thing about it was, if we had a thought, or if we'd have known that there was going to be anything, we had plenty of time to remove the blockage from the pipe.
Yes.
But it wasn't thought about, and the next thing I got a telephone call from Rob McDowell.
Great.
This man was being excluded. So there's been a few. That was a low moment now. That was definitely a low. But it wasn't of my doing. I didn't put it there, but I suppose I should have. The driver probably didn't know it was there either. So I should have done something about it. But anyway, that's history now. And Rob wasn't just the most popular man about here for a while.
No.
He's still here, and we all get on very well. I mean,
yes.
Rob and Sheila definitely have tightened it up a bit now. That's for sure.
I can suppose it was getting a wee bit out of control too, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, once bitten, twice shy. That's a lesson I learned a long time ago. So
yes.
And I should have learned it from Spain too, because the scrutineers there, give you a really hard time. But we never fell out with any of them, and we never fell out with any of them here. We have to meet every other weekend, so there's no point falling out.
No, you have to go back and face them the following week or whatever. Yeah. So
an odd discussion or an odd debate sometimes with stuff, but No, you have to give them due respect. They're there to do a job. So that was a long run home that weekend. And after that, then
you still went on to win the championship that year too, as well, with Trevor Runaway, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. The last rally that year was in Galway. We had to go. We had to go to Galway to try and win the championship. As it happened, we did. We won it, and it worked out well. But if there hadn't been that fiasco in Cork, we would have won it in Cork, and we wouldn't have had to go to So there was a bit of regret about that. But anyway, that's
the joys of rallying sometimes.
Joys of the rallying, and then after Trevor, then we had guys like Willie John Dole and Willie's son, and in fact his two sons, Gavin Harris and guys like Pat Price and Paddy McVeigh and guys like that. And Paddy would have done a lot of the national events too. Now when you're heading, I remember us heading off from here with something like five cars for the same event. I can't remember, it might have been Donegal or something like that, but it's just madness. It's just complete madness. Because you're trying to keep an eye on everything. You're trying to organise 5 vans and men to go in them, and trailers and cars, and it's just crazy. That's
I'm making sure everybody's in the right place at the right time and everything else.
Yeah, and I mean, you see guys, and I remember talking to Barry Devon in Donegal, like, well, Dan, how many cars you got? Oh, we will be 18 this year. That's madness.
Yes.
But they have a great system, and they park everything up together, and they have a great way of going, and they all work through each other, and it's good.
And it works for them too, So.
It works. No, there's no question. It works. But it's too much stress for me. I can't
And like we were mentioning there, Patrick Elliott too, like the S12B he had at the finish up, like that car was built for him from Prodrive. Like it was the right-hand drive car come out of the factory, built that way, too.
That car was brand new for Patrick in whatever year it was. I can't remember, Kevin, but it was at that time Prodrive had that contract thing. There was all sorts of stipulations, and you would need to be a barrister to understand the whole contract. But basically, there was a warranty with the car, and everything was warranted. But whenever you had to have an engineer there in every event, and we were lucky enough to have a guy called Daniel Creed. He's an Australian guy. Right. He worked with Rally Art for a lot of years, and then he went to Prodrive. And Daniel, when he left here, he put the car in trailer mode, and there's lots of other customers here at the same.
Yes.
It wasn't a problem as far as I was concerned. The only problem was if you needed to bed brake pads or do something like that.
Yes. You
couldn't take it down the road, and this was to cover their backs. But they knew once they left the car here that it wasn't going to be
down the road. Yeah.
20 stages on it testing. So that was good from their point of view, and it worked well too, because I remember one Friday afternoon, Daniel arrived over. We headed away to a bit of a road to do a bit of a test. About the 3rd or the 4th run, car went up past me, and the next thing seen a puff of smoke, and went over, and there was a connecting rod that came up through the top of the block. Now, this was sort of 2 o'clock on the Friday afternoon. I rang Steve Smith and asked him, have you got a spare engine sitting there? He says, I'll get back. A couple of minutes later, he says, yeah, I have one. I said, right, you can get somebody on the boat. I came home, pulled the engine out, and I think about 4 a.m. A wee guy from Prodrive, Charlie Dodd, arrived here with an engine. And the car was driving out of the workshop here at 9 a.m. to go onto the trailer to go to scrutiny. So that was the warranty or the contract part of Prodrive. Now, obviously, Patrick Elliott had to pay for the boat, the freight, and whatever.
Yes.
It worked well now. It did work well. It paid for it through the teeth, but you know, that's.
But there was reassurance from his point of view then as well, I suppose. You know.
Yeah. So that was a lovely car, and still is to this day. It's gone to Belgium now. There's a guy in Belgium that owns that car now, but it was a fantastic car.
And you've probably looked after that car from she came out of Prodrive until this year, really.
Well,
it was between Patrick Elliott and McVeigh and all that too.
Well, she left here. She was away from here for about a year or so. Then came back, but Paddy didn't really do that much rallying in it after it came back, so she sold. But yeah, lovely car, beautiful car.
Yes.
And it was built to order, as you say, for Patrick.
Yes. And then, you know, through all this, you continued with your driving career too.
Oh! Well, I realised a long number of years ago that I didn't get the phone call from Des O'Dell or those guys. I reckon we better not take this too seriously.
Yes.
To be honest, if you asked any of the guys that have sat with me, it's all about a day's crack. I mean, a day's crack. Yeah, you have to be serious about it too. Because there's a dangerous enough sport without acting the lag too much. But if I don't have at least a good laugh somewhere along the rally route, or maybe even in one of the stages, it hasn't been but it was all just for crack. I never took it too seriously. I never got involved in championships or anything like that.
Just on one-off events that you wanted to do as such, So.
One or two events in the year. I was very lucky. I had somebody like Tony Kearns who sat with me in quite a few of them. Tony put up a large proportion of the budget and also co-drove for me too. Now, Tony, a bit like myself, he would tell you that he wouldn't be a co-driver by any stretch of the imagination, but we had some great results and some crack, and as I say, one or two events in the year, and that was all that kept me happy. And, I can remember, you were doing your local rally, you were doing your own rally. We've done a few of the championship rounds down through the years, but if you're only doing one or two rallies a year, you do your own and whatever, and then you always get the begrudgers and sure, McCartney knows where he's going and he knows this, he knows that. Well, my argument for that is, Kevin, and most of the guys who are doing this, Giernan, have probably done the rally more often than I have.
Yes.
If you can't know those stages, or you can't learn those stages, doing them at rally speed, twice or three times every year, you must forget about rallying. So don't become one of that one to me. So anyway, it never bothered me, and we just let the state time do the talking.
Because they have been doing 8 or 9 or 10 events in the year, where you're only doing your 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Quicker, obviously, or should have been.
I never really got involved in any of that controversy or any of that backstabbing or begrudgery. And listen, I don't need to prove myself to any of those.
When the voices go, that's when you go.
Once the guy or the clock at the start of the stage goes to go, you don't have any friends then until the next stop board. The way I look at it, there's no friends in there. But listen, I get on the very, very best with everybody that I've ever competed with. I've never had any controversy, and I wouldn't even be bothered with that.
No, doesn't appeal to you, that whole side of it. You just want to drive and as fast.
No, exactly. And I'd be a good believer in, if it happens in the stage, that's where it should, start and finish in the stages. This road penalty nonsense and all. It's there's been a lot of controversy over the years, and I've seen it and I've heard about it. I've never been involved in it, but it's part of the rules, I suppose. And if somebody wants to try and win it that way, well, whatever. That's the way the rules are. It's not for me to.
Like, your own local rally, the Bushwacker. Like, what a record you have in it! Unbelievable. Like 8 wins, and nearly.
Yeah. We were always fairly lucky in the Bushwacker. We were always fairly lucky. Now, a couple of years, I was handed the rally, with guys who either went off the road or for whatever reason.
Yeah.
It was, you know, some very, very, very hard fought ones in the Bushwacker. And then there was other ones that were handier, you know, I wouldn't say handier, but they looked easy, but I can assure you they were not very easy. And then we threw in an odd one away from home just to keep the boys quiet.
Like, I know Rory Kennedy was telling me about one just done down the country. It was a Group N Subaru or something just run at the time, and he said he never laughed as much in a day. It was just, I was like, oh, I can't remember. Was it that one?
Carrick-on-Sure.
Yes.
There again, and another sponsored car, Willie John Doan's 2-door Group N car.
Yes.
We went to the rally just for the crack. We had no ambitions of going to win it or anything, but we ended up winning it.
Yes.
And that day, the crack was mighty. There was one particular stage. The car was so quiet, you know, she was a very quiet Group N car. We'd arrived, we went over the flying finish, and the flying finish was sort of down around the corner from the stock car. And we come up, typical co-driver, you know, he's got all these stopwatch stuff going, and I says we were 9:42 on that, and next thing the girl was parked on my side, and I gave her out the card and came back in, and he says, "Jesus, that time's wrong." I said, "Your man says that time's wrong." "No, she says that's the time I got." So there's a bit of controversy, 4 or 5 seconds, whatever it was. And I said, "Don't worry about it, Roy. It's only a bit of crack." And I said, "Do you know what happened?" I said, "We went over that flying finish, and your man never even heard us coming." So later on that evening, we done the same stage again, and we're coming down through these fast 3 rights and 3 lefts and big slides on everywhere, and we're coming near the finish, and I says to Rory, I says, "Blow the horn at them cunts." So Rory, he was blowing away and trying to read notes and laughing. God, Kevin, how we didn't go off the road laughing.
He did tell me, he said it was one of the best days he ever had in a rally car, you know.
I think we had a slightly better time on the stage now. On to the poor girl that was doing the timetable. Christmas like that, and I love days tracks like that, you know.
Yes.
No pressure, and we were lucky enough to win the rally, and then we were up at that rally up in Antrim, what he called the Toshiba rally. And we were on a real ding dong day. It was fantastic. We were going well. It was that big stage, the Slevenora stage.
Oh yeah.
Well, this must have been. It could have been the same year, maybe. Could have been the same year. I'm not sure. But we're down that big long straight. You go over the very bad bumps, and then the big long, and then there's like a 3 right or something at the end of it. This is absolutely flat out in 6th gear, and through another couple of corners, and then the next thing, blah 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 blah. And Roy says, "What the fuck's that?" I says, "Jesus, I don't know, Roy, I think it's a drive shaft or something." And the next thing, the front right-hand wheel came off and disappeared into the trees. Now, literally, before, you know, half a mile before this, we were doing 100 odd mile an hour, and I thought to myself, Jesus, we were lucky there. We were lucky. But that one got away from us. You know, that's to say, you know, there was...
the Toshiba rally was the rally, you know, a gravel rally at that time, you know, because you had RPM coming to like Toshiba sponsoring it and one thing and another. That was they always, was it Patrick, not Snyder over there, Aaron Swartz over there 1 year and all too, wasn't it?
That's right. Well, I think I went to do that rally again the following year.
Yes. It
was probably a bit of unfinished business, so David Moynihan went with me. That's right. I think that was 93, maybe it's
93.
Yeah. David Moynihan went with me in the rally. Like the first rally I won in Carrick-on-Sure, I was using Bill Adair's tyres there.
Okay.
That is one of the main reason for Bill being there. Of course, in the Toshiba, I was using Philip Moynihan's tyres. Kumos. the rally, and David rang me a night or two before the rally, and he says, what size of tyres do you want for this car? I said, geez, I don't know, 205s or whatever they are. Now, what I didn't know then was a 205 Kumo is nearly half as wide again as a 205 Pirelli.
Okay, right, yes.
Up until this, I was more used with Pirellis, but anyway, these tyres, they were nearly as wide as tarmac tyres. We started off the rally, and it just wasn't working right. Anyway, but halfway through the rally, or just before the service, on some of those stages, we arrived in at a corner, changed down through all the gears, and then I discovered there was no clutch. I mean, literally, you can put your foot on the clutch. It's just like putting your foot on the hard floor. There was nothing. There was nothing there. And the clutch wasn't engaging. But anyway, lucky enough for those Group A cars, you don't really need a clutch once you leave the line. So we got to the end of the stage, and I says, "No clutch. What are we going to do?" And there was a service area down in somewhere just near the coast. It might have been Ballycastle or somewhere. So we went down in there, and Kenny and Philip Morgan was there, and he says, "What about the tyres?" I says, "Philip, I think the tyres are too wide." But he says, "We'll try these other tyres." But I said, "Sure, listen, we've no clutch. There's nothing. We can't. You know, I just had to switch it off. You couldn't start it up and the gear and take off." So he says, "We'll try the narrower tyres." And I said, "But hold on a minute. There's no clutch in this car." So we says, Kenny says, "You're going ahead, try her away, and your starter on the button or something." So we tried starting her on the button, and it wasn't, you know, she was chugging away and chugging away. So we got to the start of the next stage, and when we pulled up, switched all off, and I says, "No, this is not going to work." So I started it up, and was sitting, moved up the stage start, and we're sitting on the line, and at the car running, and as soon as the guy said 3, 2, 1, I just banged it into first gear and hit the throttle, and it worked. Away we went. We discovered at the end of that stage that you know, if we had a spun or anything, that was curtains. But we kept it up. We were having a great battle with Trevor Moore, and I think Derek McCartney was involved in it there too. We got to the end of that stage, and we discovered the tyres were fantastic. We were like 7 seconds quicker than we were the first time through it. So, a long story short, we went into the last stage, which is the wee short one up at the, I can't remember what it was, but just over a mile, it's like a mile and a half.
Oh, yeah.
And it was into the forest park, and we were level on time with Trevor Moore. No, I'm telling you, like, we were 1 second down on Trevor Moore. And I said, "This is going to be a big ask here." So I've done the same procedure again. As soon as the guy said go, I hit the first gear. And away we went. Now, I can remember the wee bits and pieces in that stage, and it just says, "Right, you just need to grow a set here." I can remember trying to drive like Colin McRae. I stuck my neck out on a fuel and got away with it. And we came to the end of the stage and knocked it out of gear and pulled in, and your man says we were 2 up on Trevor. So that left us winning the rally by 1 second.
Yes.
So we're very happy with that. But then the drama didn't end there. We went into the service park, and we started coming down the road. I can't remember what we were on, number 3 or 4 or something, but on the outskirts of Ballymena, on the motorway, there was an accident. There was a bit of a coming together, and we came up, and of course, at this stage, the police and everything's there, and I couldn't stop the car.
You didn't clutch it.
Put the hard shoulder to try and get past all this mess, and up eventually, and then of course we're watching away to make sure the police weren't coming after me. We got in and around all the wee back roads around Ballymena there, and David says to me, he says, "Hey, this is going to be tight." I says, "How tight?" He says, "We should be there in 1 minute." And I says, "I know." So we were going to round all these wee roundabouts out there around the outskirts of Ballymena, and we're off doing 90 miles an hour. We arrived on the control, and I knew that we were late.
Yes.
Of course, I just came in, switched it off, and three-wheeled down into the car park. And David, he jumped out and got the thing. We were 3 minutes late at the final control.
Okay.
The clerk of the course was Michael Johnson. I think it was Michael Johnson. He came over and he opened the door, and I was sitting just scared. He says, "What happened there? Why were you late?" I said, "Michael, we were coming down the motorway, and there was a bit of a rear end job, and the traffic built up, and we just couldn't get through." And that's all I said. And luckily, the next two competitors and the next three competitors were also late. So then he went and he cancelled the penalties for the last road section.
Right.
Much to the horror of an off-road driver jumping out of their stuff to see why. But listen, it was nothing.
No.
I didn't. Hey, we'll go back to, you like to do it on the stage. It's not the road section.
Of course.
You know, as far as the stage time swept, there was 1 second in my favour, and you know. As I say, I didn't get involved in it, and I wouldn't get involved in it, and I wasn't asked to get involved in it.
No.
So
If it went the other way, you'd have accepted the same. So.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't be beating anybody in the road section for nothing, whatever. That's the way. So, no, that's what I'm saying. My own rallying, we never really took it too seriously. We just went for the crack.
And like, you know, over them years, like you drove like Mantas, Orion, Metros, you know, different Subarus and all. Is there one car that stands out? No, that time.
Well, the scariest one was the Metro.
Yes.
The noise. And I remember writing a wee note somewhere, I think it might have been on the peak of my helmet, and it says, "Do not drive this car sideways." Or don't try to drive this car sideways, because she scared me. Now she not scared me, but she just was a different beast. But I'd say the favorite would be the Out Avenger. Was good crack, no power. The Group A Impreza, what I'd have to say, would be the one, a real good clubman spec car. Lovely, easy car to drive, very forgiving. Just do what you want it to do, really. And
wasn't crazy money in comparison to, you know, the cars now and things and that as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, you don't have all the fancy gear shifts and gear levers and stuff like that, but they were, you know, if you had half a dozen boys out in Group A Imprezas, you would have some days competition, definitely.
Yes.
Good crack.
Then in 2005, you done 5 Mile Town, and there was like a young guy sitting beside you that went on to greater things.
He did. I have never sat with him now. I wouldn't have the nerve to do it now. I would have done it back when I was his age, but I don't know, Kevin, how that came about. I think maybe Gary Milligan or somebody out of the motor club asked, you know, could speak to Chris to see would he come and do the rally or something.
Yes.
And I think he might have been driving for the Sifton Junior team or something at that time, but we knew there was going to be no possibility of getting a car, getting a deal together. It was going to cost money. So I said, sure, if you're any good at the co-drive, you can come with me. So sure enough. And there's an in-car video floating about somewhere now. I haven't seen it in a long time, but there's a few times he turned over 2 pages in the notes. There again, you know, I had done 5 Mile Town several times, and I had a fair wee idea of the stages. But when the notes are coming, you know exactly what's coming. So the notes weren't coming. But you know, just to describe the competitiveness of him, you know, he was very angry with himself. Right. He was very angry with himself. And then once you get back on to where he should have been, you know, he was, come on, go. Yeah. I'm very happy going at the pace I'm going at. There's a couple of chicanes on it, and I would have been fairly handy through the chicanes. And when we're on the road, he said, you know, you're lost in a second or two of those chicanes. I said, I'm just here. The difference is, you see those 2 big wing mirrors that's on there? I said, Robbie has to pay for them.
You know how much they cost?
some government sister and sticking them on for you, and they're not costing you anything. We'll worry about that. But anyway, no, fantastic days, crack, good experience, and good laugh too. Some great laughs on it, and we had a great battle that day with Glenn Allen, God rest him. We had a great battle.
Yeah. And another one of them rallies you won by 1 second. You leave it.
That's right, Kevin. I've had quite a few of those now. I've had quite a few of those. Yes. I've been on the right side of most of them now, but there's been a few close.
Yes. Yeah. You like to leave it in suspense, don't you?
Well, as a local guy around here, Kevin O'Kane, used to say, "She's as good as a week if it's on the right side."
That's true. That's true. That is true. As long as you're 1 second ahead, it's better.
That's right. That's right.
And I suppose we just touching the cars you prepped on again too. Declan Boyle too. Declan Brown and the S12B as well. There's another very special thing you had with them.
That's right. That was an ex-Tim McNulty car. We had a couple of very good seasons with Declan. Maybe not so much luck with the Fiesta, but the Subaru now, it was there again a tough year. I don't remember, it was 14 or 15, maybe 15.
I done the Tarmac Championship and the National Championship and all that.
Yeah, well, that's a big ask. That's a big ask for, even if you've got 2 cars, it's a big ask. But to do it in 1 car. And there was one bit of a hiccup in the middle of it somewhere. I think he went off the road in Killarney, and the car wasn't ready then for the next national event. I'm not sure what way that worked out, but anyway, it all worked out in the end, and we had we showed up the national. It went to the wire up in the Harvest. The tarmac. But winning Donegal was the big
thing. That was the icing in the cake as far as Declan was concerned, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that's the big thing for the local men, the Donegal men, and it's a big achievement now for the Donegal boys. I didn't realise how big a thing it was for the Donegal, for the local lads, until that. Because years ago we quit. As soon as the rally's over, get it on the trailer, get it up the road, get out of town. And Donegal that year was much the same. It was just another rally, Kevin, to be perfectly honest with you. And we were very lucky. We won the rally. Few wee hiccups along the way too. Things just starter motors working and stuff like that. But a couple of very good seasons there, and tough, very good driver, very good co-driver. Just done the thing properly, and great success with that. As I say, maybe just not as much with the Fiesta, but that's the way it goes.
And do you think that the S12B will be still, in years to come, be looked back as the ultimate car for Irish tarmac?
It probably was, Kevin. The advantage that, comparing that with the newer cars, the new 1.6 cars, the 1.6 cars now, you need a lot more commitment, but they go around corners a lot quicker and they stop a lot quicker.
Yes.
The 2-litre, the big Subaru would have a lot more torque up the mountains and things like that. Wouldn't just be as nimble. Maybe just doesn't need as much commitment. But it's all progression, it's all evolution, and it's all progress, development.
But when you think the 12B was one and come out in 07, 08, and it was still one in Lakes of Donegal up until 2018.
Yeah.
Years later, that's so much with all that technology coming on stream and all.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. A fantastic car, and they were relatively easy to run, but they were 07, 08 now. Sure, how long ago was that? 12
years, 10, 12, 13 years, so.
Yeah. But it's all progress. I mean, every year and every couple of years, with tires and fuel and suspension and stuff, it's just amazing the way it.
The grip levels now is just something else. It really is. And over the last couple of years, then you've been running Niall McCullough And
Niall, yeah. Niall, in fact, I sold Niall that car. I was using it for hire, so E09, and sold it to Niall. I was actually hoping to sell it to somebody way at the other end of the country to get rid of it, there's too much work on. And then he arrived one day and says, "Oh, I buy that." Oh, so anyway. Now a couple of years in that and some great results, and actually he won one of the gravel rallies.
He did. He won 5 Mile Town as well, and he won one of the Forestry Championships as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So a couple of very good years for him in that, and then we had another wee fiesta here. Marty McKenna across the road. Done a few rounds of the championship and stuff like that, and but then just the way the thing has ended up now, it's a mess. This COVID thing, you know.
That's it.
But I always had very good customers, and I don't think I've ever fallen out with any of them. You know, I've never went anywhere that I couldn't go back, and I still speak to them all. They all still, I think, they speak to me.
Good.
So it's been very busy. Few years from the 90s to now, really. And to be honest, at the minute, I'm enjoying the break from it.
To get the break. Suppose it takes up every weekend, and every weekend you're away somewhere. All week you're prepping the cars. It's just
right. And as I say, you never know until the Sunday night what you're bringing up the road in the trailer, and you don't know what sort of week you're going to have. But as I say, I'm not missing it at the minute. I just can't afford to retire yet, but I won't ever be as busy as we used to be back in them days. Now, you're just not fit to do it anymore. You know, anybody who thinks they're at my age, they need their head looked at.
The same appeal to you to get that involved again.
But I'm sure I'll still be in an odd car park or an odd.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was it 2019 then? You took on a completely different challenge. You decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Exactly.
2019 January. I don't know, as my wisdom or what. I decided to go and climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. It was all in aid of the IRFU Charitable Trust.
Yes.
It's a great charity that helps. It's a rugby charity, obviously, and it helps injured players. At the moment in Ireland, there's almost 40 poor souls in wheelchairs and have bad injuries. So that was the cause behind it. It was a fantastic experience. It was fantastic. It probably trained for about 6 months. Not serious training now, but just gym work and a lot of walking and up over the mountains and stuff. But anyway, we went there, and the whole trip took 10 days. We were on the mountain for 7 days. It's the altitude is the problem there. There's no mountaineering as such. There's a wee bit of climbing to be done on parts of it, but the most of it's all hiking. But the altitude, Kevin, is just, unless you have been there, you just can't. It's hard to describe. You can breathe all you want, but there's nothing there. You know, it's just
there's no air.
There's no oxygen in the air, and as I say, you don't have to be an athlete to do it. I mean, I would be a long way from an athlete. You need a reasonable level of fitness. The altitude is the killer. Now there's been Olympic athletes have failed to do it because of the lack of oxygen. But we all got up as a group. There's 32 of us. We all got up and raised a lot of money for the charity.
And a lot of the guys you done it with were ex-Ireland rugby players now too. So
there was 4 ex-professional players: Stephen Ferris from Ulster, Shane Byrne from Leinster, Mike McCartney, who had played for Leinster and Connacht, and who was it? As it come to me, there's 4 of them, 4 ex-players, and fantastic time, great experience. A lot of people, and men and women for all shapes and sizes, and great adventure. Great adventure.
Yeah, it's going to be one of them things you'll remember forever today, isn't it? Really.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's the sort of thing when we're up there. I can't remember how long we were on the summit. It was -20. Your eyebrows were frozen. Your hairs and your nose were frozen. And as Q O'Brien used to say, when you speak, the words freeze in front of your mouth. So I can remember distinctly saying, right, that's that done. I don't need to Marcus Horn was the other guy. He was a monster man.
Oh, right.
So as I say, good company, and those guys all fit professional players, and recently retired. Those guys are athletes since they were at school.
Yes.
And they never done anything as tough. They thought it was.
They found it hard going too, like so.
Very tough, but it's great to get away and do something different and
outside your comfort zone, as they talk about, So.
Right. Yeah. Well, that'll be my second sport would be rugby. Never played it, but I tried, and I'm glad I never was any good at it because I'd probably be in more shape than now.
Well, Robbie, I think that's as nice a place just to call it a day at that. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join us here in this episode.
Good man, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me. I hope you don't need to use that edit button too much.
Hopefully not. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Excellent. Thanks a million, Kevin. Bye-bye.
That was Robbie McGurk and myself, Kevin Glendinning, talking rally. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did recording it. If you could please like and share across all social media platforms. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, can you please rate the podcast? It would be gratefully appreciated. Until the next time, take care. Speak soon. Bye-bye.